Here's a news flash for you. The government's use of drones to kill terror suspects puts our country on a slippery slope that could end up creating new terrorists even as drones kill them. Yeah, news flash, right? That finding is from a report from the top military and intelligence officials. It's out today. This new report claims that droning suspects overseas could put our country in a state of nonstop war, and that it sets the stage for other countries to use the same deadly tactics. Man, these guys are geniuses, aren't they? How'd they figure that out? White House officials say they look forward to reviewing the report, but insisted the United States needs to continue its drone program. The report comes out the same week that a court released a censored version of a secret legal memo. It outlines our White House's justification for droning American citizens who are suspected of terrorism. It claims that the drone attack that killed Anwar al-Awlaki, American citizen, was legal because he was the leader of an enemy force. It also claimed that the constitutional right to due process does not always apply if it's too big a burden for the government. Let me repeat that. The right to due process does not apply if it's too big a burden for the government. In other words, if it's too hard for the government to arrest you, they can just kill you if you're a terror suspect overseas. Catherine Herridge is the reporter on this thing, and she's live in D.C. What other, I mean, these are astonishing findings from this report, Catherine. I don't know how they do this genius work.
Well, what's interesting about this report, Shepard, is it does lay out in black and white some of the things that you have been talking about at length on your show, and specifically with the rise of Islamist groups like what we're seeing now in Iraq and Syria, where this ideology is gaining traction. The report found, quote, no indication that U.S. strategy to destroy al-Qaeda has curbed the rise of Sunni Islamic extremism, deterred the establishment of Shia Islamic extremist groups, or advanced long-term U.S. security interests. And today, the former head of the U.S. Military Central Command, that group has oversight of the Middle East, co-chaired the panel and emphasized that drones are a tool and not a strategy.
If I had $1 for every commander, political person, leader of the CIA that has pronounced the death of a terrorist organization or extremist movement over the past 13 years, I would be a rich man.
And since 2010, a recent report by the RAND Corporation concluded that the number of terrorist groups has jumped about 58% since 2010, and that was a peak year for drone use by this administration, Shep.
Hey, what does this report say about the law here, Catherine?
Well, this is, I think, one of the most interesting elements of the report. It says that without clear rules on drone use, the panel warned that the U.S. would find it very hard to object if the Russian president used lethal force.
We're obviously all share a concern that if Vladimir Putin were to use drone strikes to take out those he felt were politically inconvenient in eastern Ukraine, for instance, it would be a little tough for us to have an adequate response.
This panel was formed after the president gave that speech last year at the National Defense University here in Washington, where he promised a thorough review of the drone program. But as you've been reporting, Shepard, there's been little public progress on the issue.
Just as Guantanamo had been the Bush administration's unfortunate legacy, drones are becoming, and I think probably will become, President Obama's legacy in the international law area.
There are a half dozen recommendations. The principal recommendation is that the Defense Department should really be the one responsible for drones because they have more sort of logistical or public responsibilities they have to lay out for their use, and that the CIA, which has largely been in the lead on these high-profile strikes like Anwar al-Awlaki, they should really stick to intelligence gathering. But this, as you know, has been an ongoing dispute between the two departments, Shep.
Yep, it's all new stuff. Catherine, it's nice to see you. Thank you.
Nice to see you, too.
Let's bring in Gunnery Sergeant Jessie Jane Duff. She served 20 years on active duty in the United States Marines with several deployments overseas. Gunny Duff, it's a pleasure. Thank you for your service, and thanks for being here.
Thank you for inviting me, Shep.
These are useful tools, but man, you got to be careful who's making all the decisions, don't you?
Oh, absolutely. One of the best things about drones is that they can go into very remote regions and get in front of these people. They're basically able to chase terrorists and fly for over 24 hours. So if the terrorists are starting to flee, it's very difficult to get an unmanned plane in there on time. So with a 24-hour capability, they're able to hover, they're able to watch, and then when it's time to strike, they're able to do it in these very difficult locations where boots on the ground can actually cost our Americans lives.
Of course, and that they are now able to fly for so long is an incredible achievement. 24 hours.
Yes, yes. Some of the other advantages to a drone is that you're not looking at risking human life, such as your crew and your pilots. Yet a drone can have as much firepower as some of our Black Hawk missile carriers. They're able to really strike with a lot of force. But many people are nervous about the civilian population that we can consequently take down with them.